Tonight, since I can't see your faces, so I won't be able to know your mood, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to evaluate your religion. And our basis for evaluation is going to be the religion of the Samaritans. You remember in Matthew chapter 5, verse 20, Jesus told his disciples that unless your religion, your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, surely you will not be able to see the kingdom of heaven. So tonight I want to suggest to you that unless your religion exceeds that of the Samaritans, heaven might also be very difficult for you. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to evaluate your religion in comparison with that of the Samaritans. Now, I know the word or the name Samaritan immediately brings to your attention the Good Samaritan, or perhaps the woman at the well. No, I'm not going to talk about those two people. These two people are perhaps, probably very likely descendants of the Samaritans that I'm going to talk about. We'll probably, for the time being, or at least for this presentation, call them Neo-Samaritans. Neo-Samaritans because we had original Samaritans, and as we are going to see, the actual indigenous Samaritans were more or less wiped out, not killed, but taken away from their home, and new people were brought into the land who became the new Samaritans. Our passage for consideration tonight is going to be 2 Kings chapter 17. You can keep your finger in there or on there if you are using a digital one, so that you follow as we go along. I'll give you the background. If you remember the history, after King David, his son Solomon took over, and after Solomon, his son Rehoboam took over the kingdom of Israel. But because Rehoboam listened to the chances of the time and did not listen to the experienced elders' counsel, the kingdom was divided. 10 tribes went to the north and became the kingdom of Israel, and their capital was at Samaria. 2 tribes went to the south and became the kingdom of Judah, because Judah was the dominant tribe in the south, and had continued their capital at Jerusalem. Unfortunately, the king who started the reign in the north, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, decided that if people continue to worship the way they were doing in the south, and perhaps go for the festivals in Jerusalem, they might end up going back to the kings of the south. So we are going to start a new religion in the north and have our people here in Samaria, so they don't have to go south for any festival. So they started what was intended to be a worship of Yahweh, but it ended up as idol worship. All the other kings who followed Jeroboam followed that trend downwards. The Bible continually repeats that so and so became king and did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. he followed after his father Jeroboam, who enticed Israel to worship idols and set up idol worship in the north. And that trend continued all the way to about 622 when Israel was taken into captivity to Assyria. So in chapter 17 of 2 Kings, if we start reading from verse 24, it says, then the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in the towns of Samaria to replace the Israelites. They took possession of Samaria and lived in its towns. So you notice all the Israelites were taken out of Samaria, out of Israel for that matter. The whole of the northern kingdom came more or less to an end, and they were taken to other lands. So the king then, who was Shalmaneser of Assyria at the time, decided that we are not going to let Samaria empty. We have to populate it with new people. That's why he commanded that the people be brought from Babylon, from Cutha, from Ava, from Hamath, from Sepharvaim, and settled them in the towns of Samaria. So Samaria became occupied by people, immigrants from these lands that I've mentioned. Now, when the settlers, the immigrants, first lived there, living in Samaria, they did not worship the Lord. Why? Because they didn't know the ways of the Lord of the land, who was Yahweh. So Yahweh sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, the peoples that you have removed and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the requirements of the God of the land. Because of this, he has sent lions among them, which are indeed killing them off. So the king of Assyria commanded, send back one of the priests you carried off from Samaria and have him go back to live there in Samaria and teach the requirements of the God of the land. Therefore, one of the priests they had carried away came and lived in Bethel, and he began to teach them how they should worship the Lord. They should worship Yahweh. Nevertheless, and that is very important, the people of each nation, whether they came from Babylon, Cutha, or Sepharvaim, wherever they came from, continued to make their own gods in the cities where they had settled, and they set them up in the shrines that the people of Samaria had made on the high places. Before the people of Samaria were deported, earlier on in the chapter, the Samaritans had built, these are the Israelites who were later taken, they had built shrines to worship idols. The people they are brought in are setting up their gods in those same shrines to be worshipped. So these are the gods, and this is how they set up their worship. The men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth. That was their god and their system. The men of Cuth made Nago. The men of Hamath made Ashima. The Avites made Nibhaz and Tatak. The Sepharvites burned their children in the fires to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of the Sepharvaim. So the new residents worshipped, I like the King James, I'm reading from the NIV. The King James says, So the new residents feared the Lord, feared Yahweh, but they also appointed for themselves priests of all sorts to serve in the shrines of the high places. So it will read like this in verse 33. They feared the Lord, but they served their own gods. In other words, they feared God, Yahweh, but they worshipped their own gods. And they did this according to the customs of the nations from which they had been carried away. And they do so to this day. So this is the religion of the Samaritans. They are trying to serve Yahweh so that the lions don't eat them, but they serve or they worship the gods of their nations. So what are the characteristics that we see from these religions? Number one, the new Samaritans, the immigrants who have been brought to occupy the land, are practicing a hybrid religion. Hybrid because it's a combination of the worship of Yahweh and the worship of their gods. We named the gods. They feared the Lord, but they also served their own gods in accordance with the customs of the nations from which they had been brought. You and I know that this is attempting an impossibility. Jesus in Matthew 6, verse 24 said, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. The Samaritans were attempting this impossibility. They were trying to serve God or obey what God wanted so that the lions don't eat them, but they go and worship the gods that they had brought from their nations. Characteristic number two, this was a religion of fear. The Bible says in verse 25 of chapter 17 of 2 Kings that they feared the lions. In fact, when the Bible says they feared the Lord, what the Bible is really saying is the fear of the Lord was because of the fear of the lions. If they had a way to escape the lions, they would have nothing to do with Yahweh. So they feared the lions. Now, what is fear? Fear is the unpleasant emotion that arises in response to perceived dangers or threat. For example, in 2 Samuel 17, verse 11, when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, this is Goliath shouting from the hill down at the Israelites' camp. When Saul could hear that voice every morning and every evening, they were dismayed and greatly trembled with fear. Fear is what you experience outside of love. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. If we are afraid of God because of what might happen to us, we might look like we are actually keeping the commandments of God. Fear can make you obey commands for a while, but it does not change your heart. We can look like we are keeping the commandments of God because of the fear of what might happen to us, but that does not necessarily mean a change of heart. There was no change of heart among the Neo-Samaritans. Their heart was still with their gods, but they had to obey the requirements of Yahweh so that the lions do not eat them. I'm sorry. The next characteristic that you notice here is this was a religion of formalism. Formalism has to do with outward appearance. We look like we belong to this company, even though our hearts may not be in that company. We are only outwardly doing what the company does so that we can get what we need or want out of that company. It was therefore a religion of externalities, such as we have gone, the Christian church at large has gone through change of formalities, which has never changed the heart. We have gone through dress reform, health reform, music reform, and so on and so on, but we have never dealt with the actual place that needs to change. For example, the Samaritans feared the Lord, but served their gods. They were afraid of Yahweh, but they gave honor and the glory to their gods. They fulfilled the requirements of religion for Yahweh so that the lions cannot eat them, but they went with their hearts to worship their gods. They served Yahweh with their heads, but served their gods with their hearts. In Isaiah 29, verse 13, the Bible says, these people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is based on merely human rules they have been taught. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, the Bible says they have a form of godliness, but they deny the power therein. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from such people. The last characteristic of the religion of the Samaritans is this was a transplanted religion. We know that the change of location does not change the attitudes of the heart. The Samaritans were true to their national gods, though physically they lived and looked like they obeyed Yahweh in Samaria. Many have tried to escape to monasteries, some to high mountains, to live holy lives, but it has never worked. You can take an African from Africa, put him anywhere else in the world, give him citizenship of those new lands, but you cannot take Africa from inside the African. Christianity is a heart transplant, not a change of locality or location. If we are going to belong to Yahweh, we need new hearts. True religion is a heart transplant. David prayed, create in me a new heart. In Ezekiel 36, verse 26, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Then our religion will be different from that of the Samaritans. Is your religion based on the fear of consequences? Is it based on rewards? Is it based on formalism? Is it an outward appearance? Or is a change of heart? Or is your religion a hybrid? You still cling to the inclinations of your heart, rather than the wooing of the Spirit of God? Which of these rules your heart? Which of these dictates the choices of your worship on a daily basis? Based on this, does your religion exceed that of the Samaritans? Is the question that I will leave with you tonight. May the Lord bless you as you meditate upon this and make your choices.